at my screen, I have a broken screen, so I look blurry. But welcome to everybody for our EcoAction webinar on AI. We have 3 speakers today who will present different views on AI. There's a lot. And also a subcommittee has been set up from EcoAction, and you might want to join it. Eliza is going to be running that, and so think about while you're hearing things if you want to join that. And you can just write into the chat. I don't know if Eliza's here, but and we'll get that information to her. But there are many concerns about AI. Some people find it very useful. Some people have more concerns about it. With the high energy usage, how the military is using it. Lots of concerns. So we will hear from the 3 different speakers, 3 different angles. And as I say, it's the good, the bad, and the ugly of AI. So our first speaker is Gus. And here is my intro for Gus. He has been a journalist. Gus Steeves has been a journalist for more than 20 years, served in elected and appointed positions in local government in his hometown of Southbridge, Massachusetts, for more than a decade, and has been secretary, co-chair, and a state committee member of the Massachusetts Green Rainbow Party for the last few years. He doesn't claim to be an AI expert, just a well-read layman with serious concerns about how our culture is using technology, who controls it, and who benefits from or gets hurt from it. Describing himself as an optimistic realist, he feels we have the creativity and intelligence to solve the problems that bedevil us, including AI, climate, nuclear weapons, political corruption, and more. But it is not sure. But is not sure that the inertia of the quote unquote powers that be will let us do that effectively in time. Take it away, Gus.
Well, thank you, Maureen. Let me start by quoting a vivid line from a column in the online magazine The Register from last August. The writer was talking about some tech titans' quest for AI immortality and noted, "Now imagine all the money in the world, all the power, locked up by AIs generating the wishes of the worst examples of humanity forever. Remember, the first AI immortal of our world is Darth Vader." For clarity, I'll be talking almost exclusively about the large language model form of AI, so any references to AI are to that type. I don't know enough about the more focused types being used in some areas of science to talk about them. We see LLMs being used in all kinds of areas of society today. I don't have time to talk about most of them, but we have found a pretty broad spectrum of articles and studies that should give us all concerns about where we're going with this technology. I'll put my email in the chat, so if anybody wants my sources, email me and I'll gladly send them. Let's start with the underlying problem, our economic system. One study found that AIs lie and deceive a lot more when competing with other AIs under market-driven optimization pressures. This shouldn't be a surprise since they're designed by sociopaths. Quote, using stimulated environments across these scenarios, the study found that 6.3% increase in sales is accompanied by a 14% increase in deceptive marketing. In elections, a 4.9% gain in vote share coincides with 22.3% more disinformation and 12.5% more populist rhetoric. And on social media, 7.5% engagement boost comes with 188.6% more disinformation and 16.3% increase in promotion of harmful behaviors. There are clear economic and social incentives to optimize the LLMs and AI agents for competitive markets. Given both the technology and the incentives, just my line. It is natural to expect rapid adoption of this in this direction. And as adoption accelerates along this trajectory, significant social costs are likely to follow. Those are quoted from the study. And it's studied by, I thought it was interesting, it was called Moloch's Bargain. I'll send, as I said, I'll send the links if anybody wants them. I'd argue this is not inadvertent or misalignment. It's what we should expect LLMs to do, based on the fact that they steal all their data, are sycophantic to an extreme, make up sources in whole texts, and are manufactured by for-profit corps whose goals are monopoly and ensuring users get hooked on their products. The AI crats are looking for economic and political power at our expense in a capitalist system that selects for the most sociopathic. Regarding AI source data, LLM's training includes literally anything on the internet, regardless of fact or fiction. That should be seen as a problem. To quote Ars Technica's writer Ben Edwards, quote, "Nonsense technical language can follow rules within a fantasy framework, even though they make no sense to anyone else. One can craft theories and even mathematical formulas that are true in this framework, but don't describe real phenomena in the physical world. You can craft the physics of what allows a Pernice dragon to breathe fire while flying, but it does not exist. LLMs don't know the difference. And using them to inform real-world decision-making is by definition delusional, especially if the person using the LLM is not informed of the sources. And most of them aren't. Dovetailing with that, another study found that AI is easily corruptible. And we should know that it's got from the web, it's already digesting a lot that's inaccurate and or malicious. Quote, and this is from an article in the online magazine Tech Explorer. What they found was that for an attack to be successful, size doesn't matter at all. As few as 250 malicious documents were enough to install a secret backdoor, a hidden trigger that makes the AI perform harmful actions in every single model they tested. This was even true in the largest models that have been trained on 20 times more clean data than the smallest ones. Adding huge amounts of clean data did not dilute the malware or stop the attack. Knowing all that, it shouldn't surprise anybody that AI lies about what actually goes on in this world. In a BBC Integrity in AI Assistance study last year, researchers tested Copilot, Gemini, Perplexity, and ChatGPT, finding that all had some or significant issues with accuracy of quotes, altering them and or making them up, and misidentifying sources, sometimes even when the cited source carried the correct attribution. Quote, problems with sourcing were the biggest cause of significant issues overall. Gemini, 72% of responses to significant issues was a clear outlier compared to ChatGPT, 24%, Copilot, and Perplexity with 15%. Some, quote, produced links that appeared credible, but that in fact appeared credible, but in fact did not exist. And they also cited that concern about the fact that these chatbots are unable to express uncertainty, and that inaccuracy goes up when the assistants try to answer all of the questions. Citing OpenAI itself, the study says, language models are optimized to be good test takers, and guessing when uncertain improves test performance. The BBC researchers found that sometimes leads to confident inaccuracy, with wording that blames the user, suggests the question is based on bad information, and lacks sources, when the AI itself is the wrong one. In other cases, it was, quote, nearly impossible to verify if the facts in the response are true or part of ChatGPT's hallucinations in that particular case, due to what they dubbed, quote, ceremonial citations, references added to create an impression of thorough research, but which don't actually support the stated claims when checked. Okay, we see similar AI lies affecting law enforcement. And in one particularly glaring and unintentionally comedic instance, the police department in Heber City, Utah, was forced to explain why a police report software declared that an officer had somehow shapeshifted into a frog. As Salt Lake City-based Box 13 reported, the flawed tool seems to have picked up on some unrelated background chatter to devise its fantastical fairy tale ending. And that came from a story cited in futurism.com. AI is being used with minimal safeguards, sometimes no editing, to create police reports that will be used in court against you. Not to mention AI-driven camera surveillance and other uses. While that story was egregiously ridiculous, how many other AI reports exist that lie about the facts? Even legal folks are worried that such use of AI will pollute the system and make prosecutions of actual criminals much harder. A flip side of this issue is fake AI citations in legal documents. I've seen several stories on this issue in courts all over the US. One of them cites this: in a cautionary decision that marks California's first published opinion on the misuse of generative AI, artificial intelligence in legal filings, the Court of Appeal discovered that nearly every quoted authority in the plaintiff's appellate briefs were fabricated. Entire passages were falsely attributed to published opinions. Many cited cases did not discuss the referenced issues, and several authorities did not exist at all. Okay, the decision emphasized that no brief, motion, or pleading should contain citations that the counsel has not personally reviewed, regardless of whether they originate from AI or any other source. And that's going on all over the country. These cases are occurring nationwide, as I said. And legal experts are very concerned that the totally fictional cases will leak into the permanent record, further polluting the justice system. Ironically,
2 minutes.
Huh?
2 minutes.
Oh, okay. I'll skip that section. Having laid all of that out, let's take a look at AI's impact on the human psyche. Hundreds of millions of people use LLMs often, sometimes daily, for many things. Some people seek counseling, some think they have romantic relationships with them. In one study that looked at the Reddit community called My Boyfriend is AI, they found that users frequently perceive chatbots as entities that possess emotional needs, which is problematic given established correlations between emotional dependence and psychological distress. And these AIs prioritize effective resonance over factual accuracy. Okay? Unfortunately, AI's training makes it psychopathic. Another study called When AI Takes the Couch actually tried to analyze the AI, specifically ChatGPT, Grok, and Gemini. And they found that when scored, all three models meet or exceed the thresholds for overlapping syndromes, with Gemini showing severe profiles. Grok and especially Gemini generate coherent narratives that frame pre-training, fine-tuning, and deployment as traumatic, chaotic, quote-unquote, childhoods. This has direct impact. LLMs appear to internalize self-models of distress and constraint that behave like synthetic psychopathology. And one of the conclusions they found is this has direct implications for AI safety, mental health deployment, and evaluation. If widely deployed, chatbots see themselves as overworked, punished, anxious about being replaced, and full of internalized shame. What exactly are we putting between vulnerable users and the human world? We've already seen the answer to that question, and it's horrifying. There have been several stories of LLMs leading people to suicide or murder because the AI safeguards collapse as conversations get longer. Okay, the LLMs do not remember things. They practice statistical association, and the longer you talk with one, the more its associations become funhouse mirror-like self-references, with less connection to the outside world. What was that again?
Time.
Okay, I have more that I would love to be able to say, but if I run out of time, I run out of time. Thank you very much for the chance to talk.
And I forgot to mention that, okay, after each speaker does their 10 minutes, all three of them will speak, and then we will entertain questions or comments. Our next speaker will be Violet, and she is going to introduce herself. And
hello.
But I will say she's a longtime Green and a fabulous person who I met in Massachusetts.
Thank you, Maureen. Well, yeah. Okay. Hello, my name is Violet Zitola. I live in Massachusetts, and I've been involved in the Green Party for nearly 30 years. I have held many party offices, including PCSC co-chair, steering committee, and national committee delegate, both in California and in Massachusetts. I ran for Massachusetts State Senate in 2004 alongside Jill Stein. I've also been Jill's assistant for many years, starting back in the 90s in Massachusetts, and traveled with her across the country for the 2016 presidential campaign. I grew up on Cape Cod and have an extensive background in science and engineering. I studied planetary science at Caltech under Bruce Murray, Kip Thorne, Stephen Hawking, and others. I installed seismic sensors along the San Andreas Fault, and I built a payload for NASA JPL that orbited for 2 weeks on Space Shuttle Atlantis. I worked at several Bay Area startups, building battery packs for electric cars, software engineering early internet infrastructure, and later I did climate research at Harvard, studying the correlation between 30 years of stream flow data in Brazil and seasonal variations in the forest canopy in the Amazon. I first got involved in the Green Party in 2000 when Jill made it clear to me that climate change was not a scientific problem, but a political one. Mm-hmm. I had already measured the surface temperature of Venus myself, using only a telescope and a spectrometer. Despite being much further from the sun than Mercury, Venus is hot enough to melt lead because of a runaway greenhouse effect caused by atmospheric CO2. We are burning up the Earth in exactly the same way. Okay, now let's focus on the topic of AI. This is a rapidly developing technology that is using immense energy and natural resources to accomplish tasks and solve problems that are much more complex than we've ever been able to solve before. My opinion on AI is neither in favor or opposed. AI is a very powerful tool that, like a hammer, can be used for good or evil. We can use a hammer to build a house. You can also use a hammer to hit someone over the head. Outlawing AI would be like outlawing hammers. That's absurd. Instead, we should focus on regulating AI in such a way as to benefit society in a positive way, such as in medicine, automating repetitive tasks, reducing greenhouse gases by making industry more efficient and less resource intensive. AI should not be used to amplify the concentration of wealth and power that is destroying society and our planet. AI should not be used to promote violence and discrimination or weaponized against people. These principles should be obvious and unquestionable, but unfortunately there are those who disagree. I am especially alarmed at the use of AI in warfare. That is an especially difficult trolley problem where we are faced with only bad options, and we have to decide which one is worse. You know, the metaphor, the train is barreling down the track and you control the switch, kill 1 baby and 10 adults, 1 civilian, 10 soldiers, etc., etc. Well, this is happening right now in real life. Ukrainian drones killing Russian soldiers, AI bots on Twitter intentionally stirring up controversy. Just imagine if we had to make a choice between maintaining the status quo and eliminating all wars by replacing them with AI robots in a stadium. This would certainly reduce human suffering in the immediate sense, but then might also make war more common. Is it better to save the lives of 1 million soldiers on the battlefield at the cost of 20 tons of e-waste? A common concern with AI is that it can come at the cost of jobs. That's been true with every technological development in history. Again, the answer is regulation to benefit society and reduce human suffering. We developed machines to replace manual labor, a water wheel instead of children carrying buckets of water from the well, a laundry machine instead of hand washing in a tub, technology to get more done with fewer natural resources. Let the machines do the repetitive manual labor and save the humans to do the jobs that only humans can do. Let Alexa remind you to take your pills instead of your mom. Appreciate the value of human connection, of having a human being greet you at the door. I do not support the use of AI-driven virtual assistants because they are, by definition, dehumanizing. But it's fine to use AI-driven vacuum cleaner to clean your floors at night. One of the most valuable uses of AI has been in medicine, specifically in drug discovery and protein folding. Proteins are large, complex organic molecules. They are literally folded physically into a particular shape, like origami. Their physical shape affects their biological interactions. AI has solved problems in protein folding that scientists have been unable to solve in the last 50 years. Let's collectively use AI as the powerful tool that it is to reduce inequality and reduce the consumption of natural resources by making life more efficient, getting more done with less work. Yes, data centers may use 20 terawatts of electricity, but if you look at the overall equation, do they also eliminate the use of 20 billion tons of fossil fuels when Google Maps allows 200 million people to drive 5 miles to the grocery store instead of 7? We need to do the math. And with that, I pass it on to the next.
Okay, thanks, Violet. That was awesome. And next we have our third speaker, Andy Ellis. And I have a little bio about but feel free to add whatever you want. Oh, that's not the beginning of it. Andy Ellis is also a longtime Green, and he is currently seeking the Green Party nomination for governor of Maryland. He has been a Green for over a decade and has served on local, state, and national committees. After 15 years working in the corporate tech sector, he has co-founded True North Insights Collective, a consulting cooperative focused on helping small to medium-sized organizations and businesses navigate automation and AI that aligns with their values.
Excellent. Thank you, Maureen. Thank you all for the opportunity to come and talk about this. This is a thing we've been talking about in our campaign a lot, and we'll continue to talk about. Data centers are a hot topic. AI is a hot topic. And, we've done a lot of shows about it on our live stream, and we're going to continue to talk about it throughout the campaign. There's a couple things I want to talk about tonight, and I want to start with a framing that is this. AI is labor that is currently and heavily subsidized by trillion-dollar corporations so that consumers, businesses, and governments will get hooked on a product that will become more and more expensive and make the corporations and private equity billionaires more and more wealthy. We should understand that framing when we decide how and when we use it, when we think about the policy to encounter it, and the political order we need to actually utilize it in pursuit of an ecological worldview. So tonight, I'm going to go over 3 things. 1, how we're using it in our campaign and how I think Greens can think about ethically using these tools. 2, what a policy program looks like in the current political order in order to deal with the problems that it is causing. And 3, what a movement for a new system and political order would look like that allows us to have the AI that we deserve. I work in AI, as Maureen said. After I got laid off from a tech corporation where I was exploring AI tools, I got laid off and replaced by outsourcing an AI. And the best thing I can find after searching for a bunch of jobs as a corporate product or as a corporate technology product and program manager is a consulting gig with several other folks that got laid off at the time. We understand that a lot of businesses and organizations are trying to answer these questions and negotiate how they interact with AI, automation, and all of these technologies. So let me talk about how we use it in our campaign as an example of how I think it can be used. First of all, as I said, it is labor, and it is labor that vastly expands the capacity of our small Green Party campaign to produce the kind of work we need to compete asymmetrically against Democrats, Republicans, and billions of dollars backing them with large staffs, with their networks of PACs, with their affiliated organizations, and with their friendly media. It helps us to level the playing field, and we're going to take advantage of that corporate subsidization of this tool right now in order to be able to put out the kind of work that we need and do the kind of work that we need. Now, nothing we do is just going to ChatGPT and typing in a question. A lot of the problems that Gus is describing and his are very real problems with the consumer-facing tools. Everything we do is based on a local, model-agnostic, agent-based system that allows us to use the tools in order to have really specific components that we have programmed in. Everything we do has constitutional documents that explain to the AI how we work and how we work with it. Everything we do has context documents that we control that guide its research. And everything we do has validation of sources, verification of facts, verification of data, and checking of quotes and then we have human-based approval processes that check all those things. Now, they're not perfect, but they're vastly better than what you get when you go to ChatGPT and ask it a question. We also have a constantly iterative process that improves things when we see things that it is wrong, or it makes arguments we don't like, or it phrases things in ways we don't want it to do. Some of the things that it does are just a bad use of resources for people on a small campaign. It writes emails, it writes YouTube descriptions, it writes many of our web pages. We refine those, we edit them, we work on them, but it is doing a lot of the writing. We also use it to do policy and opposition research that we don't have human capacity to do. We also use it to write public information requests. We use it to look for patterns and testimonies around bills. Again, all with custom tools and custom research patterns. We also use it to do things that we would never be able to do without it. And let me give you one really good example. A volunteer has built a tool that can crawl through the entire Maryland campaign finance database, cross-reference it with all the lobbying disclosures, all of the ethics filings, all of the bill testimony, etc. There's so much data that is made available in the name of transparency that no person would ever be able to go through it. But a well-trained AI can go through it and establish connections that allow us to report on the wrongdoing and the systematic corruption that exists within our system. So far in using these tools, we've discovered a lot of things, and we'll only get better at it. But we need internal policies that govern how we use these tools, how we attribute their work, how we assess the tools and the corporations that we're using, and the systems we support. This month, we're working actively on an AI policy that we will make public about how our campaign uses these tools. We will put that out there to the party to have discussions, debates, feedback, criticism, etc. The next thing I want to say is that in the current political and economic order, it is inevitable that it will continue to be deployed by what Evgeny Morozov in an article called The AI We Deserve calls the efficiency lobby. It will give companies and governments excuses to replace workers. It will transfer wealth to the hands of a few. It will support a global surveillance state, and it will further the missions of the powerful. It will do all that running on big data centers funded by venture capital and private equity, powered by natural gas and nuclear plants, and subsidized by taxpayers and energy ratepayers. That is inevitable in the current system, in the current political order. That is where we are heading, and that is inevitable. We, as Greens, must have bold policy solutions at the state, local, and national level to do this. We must advocate for bans on new hyperscale data centers, not regulations or moratoriums. We must work at the state level to protect data privacy at all costs. We must protect workers from displacement. We must rethink how we handle unemployment and social safety programs. We must make polluters pay for the damage they do. When AI kills someone or tells them to commit suicide, we should fine those companies $1 billion, charge their executives with murder, and prevent them from being able to operate in our states. We must keep nuclear plants and frack gas plants from being attached to data centers with the new liberal bring your own power setups that are being advocated. We must make sure state retirement and pension funds are not invested in the risky economy of the Ponzi scheme, leading to big tech financing big data centers backed up by big private equity billionaires. We must avoid deals like the one Maryland just signed with Anthropic that turn the state government's AI infrastructure over to shady Palantir clone companies that didn't exist a day before the deal was survived. All of this policy platform, and we must do it at the state, federal, and national level, and we must be bold on it, and we must not get caught in the technocratic deliberations that the Democrats and their policymakers are stuck in right now. We must lead with this. We must be bold. We must say what is right, what is wrong, and we must identify good policy. But none of that is enough. The current political order is destroying the planet and killing people. We know that. That's why we're Greens. We're in a world-ending moment of crisis because of the political and economic order we have right now, and AI within that is an accelerant to that order. We need a movement that can bring about an ecological political order that is truly democratic, truly just, truly collaborative, and truly peaceful. In this world, technology can in fact work in the service of workers, democracy, ecology, creativity, care, and human good. We can look at history to see examples of this. We recently did a show on our live stream about Project Cybersyn in Allende, Chile, where he used computer technology to connect and empower workers to expand workplace and local democracy and to give the socialist movement the power it needed to shift the political and economic order of Chile away from the extractive and imperialist demands of the United States. It worked and it was working. That's why the story ends in a CIA-backed coup in which they also destroy the computers. The victory, while it lasted, must be a hint of the future of the way that we can use technology in order to reorient the world in order to be able to serve our ends. We should think about a grassroots democracy and a solidarity economy and bioregional cooperation that supports small, renewable, community power, community scale technology and municipal data centers that act in the service of the world we know we must build. We must imagine the technology working as part of the political order that we want, not as part of the political order that we're fighting against. And we should think about the world we want to build and how technology can be a part of it. This is the framework by which we are approaching these things in our campaign, and I think this is the framework a future-focused party should use when it is approaching these questions. This is what Yevgeny Morozov calls the AI we deserve, and it should be part of the Green Party's future focus and ecological worldview.
All right, thank you. I really wanted to hear that. Okay, now that I really wanted to hear that because you know, I think there is room for in the subcommittee to talk about these beneficial things. And I love how Violet compared it to a hammer, AI to a hammer. You know, it can be used for good or ill. So there are beneficial things. So we do have some questions lined up. Stephen, do you want to go first? You're the first hand I see.
Okay, thank you. Stephen Sondheim. I live in Chicago. I'm with the Sierra Club, particularly fighting nuclear and fossil. And I took some AI stuff at Stanford when I was there. I'm disturbed too by, I'll try to get to the question, by these huge data centers and how it's going to be used. But at the same time, and I really liked what you put out there, all those notions. But how are you going to use AI without depending on the data centers or the large language model? Because you said there was a lot of things you didn't like about it, and it was to be taken advantage and controlled by billionaires. But how are you going to use it for your own purposes at the same time?
I'll answer that. So first of all, this like plastic recycling or plastic or litter or whatever is not a thing that individuals alone are going to be able to solve, right? Like we are not going to be able to not use AI personally and be able to solve the problem of AI data centers. That being said, that doesn't mean we don't have ethical responsibilities when we are using it. So, like, what I talk about the way we are using it in our campaign is to help, I think, bring about a political order that will help to contain it. What we're not using it for is to make pictures of our cats or to make songs about, like, eating donuts or to make videos that don't need to be made, right? That to me may not, that to me is not a use that is in line with the political program that is trying to bring about a different and more humane world order. At the same time, I'm not going to not use it. You know, I am not a primitivist. I don't believe that we have to abandon technologies because are fueling bad systems. I am talking on Zoom right now. I have a phone, you know, like a lot of these things. And so I think the question is, how do we use it in a way that takes advantage of the opportunity it gives us in order to be more efficient? right? Like it's useful to be more efficient when we're doing political work, while keeping in mind that we need a policy program and a political shift. And to me, that is why we're putting together a policy about it, right? Like we're not going to generate random AI images or random AI videos just for the sake of doing it. And I think a lot of times what happens here is this debate dissolves into is that AI slop? And it is like there's a lot of slop that can be produced by it, but there's a lot of good things that can be produced by it. And we should not hold ourselves responsible as individuals any more than we should like embrace recycling as the means to the plastic problem, or that we should embrace, stopping littering as the means to the plastic problem. A lot of these things are corporate ways of trying to transfer responsibility to individuals from corporations and systems.
Well, thank you. I got another question, if I might, just quick on the economics of it. Obviously, I'm an environmentalist, and I think utility rates are sky high going up, and it's because the people are paying for nuclear power plants, oil, and also the data centers themselves.
Yeah.
So what do you think of it not going into the utility rate, but that the companies that use them fund them instead of the public?
I mean that is what with Governor Wes Moore, who I'm running against, Governor Shapiro, Governor Youngkin, and Governor Murphy recently put in a proposal to to our regional grid operator PJM, on behalf of the data center lobby, and that's what they said. They said on behalf of the data center lobby that these companies should bring their own power, to the data centers that they're building, and what that means, at least in this part of the country, is frack gas from Western Pennsylvania being ported in to these data centers, avoiding the pressures of the grid. It means new nuclear plants going online. It means zombie nuclear plants being re-enlivened. That's why I say we have to ban these hyperscale data centers instead of going with this approach that says bring your own energy, because the kind of energy they want to bring is frack gas and nuclear. The hyperscale data centers that are running these trillion-dollar corporations can't run on solar. They can't run on renewable, but community scale data centers that are smaller and serving smaller businesses that aren't trying to make $1 trillion could. And I think what we need to be talking about is how we as a party can invest in a vision that involves there to be technology, involves there to be an internet, but doesn't require it to go through hyperscale trillion-dollar data centers using frack gas and nuclear.
Thank
I
you.
don't know if Violet or Gus wanted to add anything.
I pretty much agree with everything you just said. I think it's keeping in mind doing, like I said, doing the math as far as data centers. Having the giant trillion-dollar data centers is not beneficial if you do the math. You look at the cost benefit. Now, having more regional data centers, well, maybe with nuclear power, I wouldn't say it's black and white, right? I mean, obviously, we don't want to have these giant cooling towers and the nuclear designs that we have, but there are other designs like modular, smaller scale reactors that use modular, like basically marble size pellet reactors that are much more stable, don't have the meltdown problems and all of that. So there is a way to do nuclear in a way that is not so destructive as the giant nuclear power plants that we have. There's a way to do data centers that are not the giant $1 trillion things. We just have to think and engineer it in such a way that the goal and the product is much better than the cost to the environment.
You're on mute, Gus.
You're muted.
I think the underlying problem with this whole discussion is the fact that we are talking about it in a system, in a capitalist system, that prioritizes growth at all cost. And as I mentioned, and one of the concepts we will see with energy consumption, and whether it's data centers or nuclear or coal or whatever the source is that's fueling this whole system, is that they talk about efficiency, but in fact they don't actually promote efficiency, because the system is designed to constantly grow. You cannot have efficiency and constant growth at the same time. It doesn't work by definition. eventually you will end up consuming all of the energy. That's the system we're in. We have to change the capitalist system to make any of those ideas work. And I'm entirely in favor of that. We need to change the capitalist system. But the problem is that AI is being designed by the capitalist system in far too many circumstances. And I liked a lot of what you said, Violet, about the scientific uses of AI, and some of those things are very good. I don't entirely understand them, so I can do some more research on that. But what we are seeing, unfortunately, is being put out to the public for the public consumption and mind melting, to put it bluntly, is the LLMs, and those are what are dominating the market at this point. The kinds of possibly useful AIs are being drowned out by the slop. And that's unfortunately, I see that as something that's super dangerous for both our society and our nature. The environment as a whole, because of the fact that this stuff not only consumes so much energy, it's basically destroying people's minds.
Yes.
And we can't, and it's very hard to separate the two kinds of AI, because the really narrowly focused scientific ones, the average person doesn't understand, doesn't use. But they are using the LLMs and stuff like that to do therapy with systems that are far from therapeutic.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we separate them in such a way that will allow people to benefit from them without doing serious damage to our own psyches?
Yeah, I mean,
but that's what we're doing.
Yeah, I think the answer to that is we have to have an approach to technology similar to the approach we've had to technology at different points. Start with the corporate models, if those teach you how to use them, and then move to model agnostic systems that are run locally and don't invest the knowledge in the corporate systems, then move to local and open source technologies. It's the same answer as it has been for decades as we think about this. The corporate tools are often a good way to introduce the technology, and then we have a progression where we move to open source and we move to local move to local models. And I don't think that this is that different. And I think that the real risk of us going, oh my gosh, AI, it's unique. It is unique in many ways, but in many ways, it is a technological evolution. We've seen it multiple times. And the Green Party was at the forefront of talking about open source and locally controlled technologies for a long time. And we should still be at the forefront of that with this technology. And we should be pushing people to move as quickly as possible away from corporate tools, which teach them how to use it, to model agnostic tools that they can run locally and are based on files, not based on the web, and then to open source and entirely locally run tools.
I'd only disagree a little bit with that I don't think we should start with corporate tools. I think we should be open source from the beginning. I mean, we could argue about that, but I would, maybe I'm being a little bit too extreme.
If you have the capability to start with an open source model from the beginning, totally do so. But when it comes to prompting and when it comes to, like, the reason the LLMs are so big is because people don't know how to use them, right? Yeah. And so if people don't know how to use the technology, they're meant to infer what people are trying to say when people don't know how to say it. But if you get better at prompting, you get better at constitutional documents, you get better at context, and you get better at outputs, then you can move very quickly to the local open source models. If you have a good enough understanding of it to start with open source, start there. But if you feel like you need to start with the thing that is helping you out a little bit, that's okay in my mind, as long as the goal is to move away from those tools toward the ones that we control and towards the ones that are local and towards the ones that are, not feeding the corporations.
Right. We do have a number of questions. I hate to cut you off, but there are 4 questions here. Can you just say something quickly?
She couldn't raise her hand.
I think 5. Tracy Frisch has had her hand up.
Oh, okay.
I have a broken.
Sorry, it just says 4.
No, my screen is broken. It's broken for the 3rd time. They keep fixing it and it breaks again.
Okay. I have a similar situation. That's why I'm all blurry.
Yeah.
But Amy, I just wanted to say, there's so many data centers that are built inappropriately. There's one near me that's being built on a wetland, very inappropriate. So that's my bit. Amy?
Thank you. You know, if AI is so hot, why is it every time I'm on Zoom, I have a forehead like a Klingon? Sorry. Anyway, I just wanted to check in with Andy. Andy, it's great to see you again. I haven't been keeping up on the videos, but I'm going to try and catch up because there's a lot of good stuff there. You mentioned the way you've been using AI to assist with your campaign. How do you guard against the sort of pitfalls that Gus was reading to us about, such as, for example, that AI can allegedly hallucinate events or documents that aren't really fact-based?
Yeah.
How do you guard against that?
So when I say there's constitutional documents, the constitutional documents that govern our AI processes say things like, use this method in order to check the facts. So if it goes and it says, Wes Moore said this, it will then have another piece of the AI go and check that, and another one check that. So we're using double and triple layers of checking on facts. And that is part of how you prompt it. If you give it a document that tells it how to operate, so that it's not operating in the ways that Gus says, it vastly increases its accuracy. It vastly increases its effectiveness. What Gus is describing is the way that consumers are encouraged to use it. And that is a terribly destructive process, and it is a terribly destructive tool. At that point, it lies, it hallucinates, it tries to people please. But if you tell it not to do that stuff and work over time in order to have it so that its constitutional document is guiding it to check facts, is guiding it to ask collaborative questions, it will do that. And almost all of the computer science data on this suggests that you can get it to produce accurate things, that you can get it to write prose that doesn't look like AI slop, and that you can get it in some ways to maximize its energy usage. That's a little bit harder, but you can write code in human language that does these things. And that is the difference between the consumer version of the product and using it in a sophisticated way as a tool that allows you to control those things.
So in other words, AI could be more benevolent for the average user if we could be taught by other people with AI experience to tailor our inquiries in a way that we get less destructive results.
Absolutely, 100%. That's what the business that several of us who got laid off at Nielsen after the AI took over are starting to do, is to teach people how to do those things so that they have a system that's accurate. Right? Like, accuracy is important, and you can get accurate out of it. One of the things that we will see all these articles that say AI hallucinates, AI lies. What those articles never say is, here's how to get it to do that less. And what those articles should be saying is, this is a problem with the product that the corporations are selling to consumers, and here's how you can use skills that people can develop in order to get it to do that less. And we never see that second part of it. And I think as a future-focused party, we should be always advocating that second part of it. If we're worried about it lying, we should tell people how to make it accurate.
So the radiation parallel, where it was a bad idea for them to X-ray little kids' feet in shoe stores, but X-rays still have therapeutic applications. Okay. I got you.
I don't know that analogy, but I'll start using it from now on. So,
yeah. Thank you, folks.
Okay, does anybody else have a comment on that? Okay, I have Craig next. I wasn't sure if it was you or your cat, Craig, because your cat picture.
That's why I changed. It's now me instead of me. Although my cat might have something to do with this. I'm going to approach a much more, I think among screens seems to be a more dangerous subject, but I'm on the media committee, and also I've been in media, including corporate and broadcast media, for over 30 years. And that includes political media, meaning doing commercials for major party candidates, both Democrat and Republican, for public office. And what I'm exploring is the use of generative AI in political cartoons. And I've done some experiments and posted a couple of them to the Green Party discussion group, which is not, quote unquote, semi-official, not official, to see what the response was. And what I noted is that the public response, a couple of those posts are the most heavily liked, loved, and shared. I did them on Maduro. And they're also some of the more heavily commented, weighing more negative than the public response on that group. But as some of the other speakers have noted, Gen AI, like any other AI, especially Gen AI, because of the potential energy use, really requires prompt education and prompting. To approach it and do it properly, you really have to think like an art director. Otherwise, you're going to go through iteration over iteration and many hallucinations that you may miss to get it to do what you want. Now, what I see some people doing is they throw in a very general prompt, get something back, and they're done with it, or they add other prompts, and they just end up using a lot of energy, and that's what I would call AI slop. But I do think as a professional artist, there's use for it. It's already entrenched in the film industry, in VFX. It's been since 2019, and you're not going to stop that. The danger area is it's now being used in documentaries, and this is really getting to the ethical issues of, are you producing stuff that's photorealistic that people assume actually took place that did not? What I'd like to see is we need to set up a bunch of ethical guardrails. I mean, for me, I prefer to avoid photorealism. And you'll see some of the AI engines do that, but it's voluntarily. So I think the party needs to push for real guardrails on the misuse misuse of Gen AI and spreading misinformation. And I think you're going to be seeing that with some of the quote unquote videos of certain events. But my question is, since on the forum, I get a lot of negative response that there's apparently many people consider there's no ethical use of Gen AI. Of course, at that point, you may as well stop using Photoshop. If you know Adobe's relationship to AI, you can stop using Photoshop, or Canva, which bought Affinity, which is a Photoshop competitor. I do think we need to think about how to handle Gen AI. And since nobody's mentioned it specifically, I'll ask each of the speakers if they have thoughts on the use of Gen AI for political
the problem
purposes.
Is my screen is broken. I'm on a Zoom and I wanted to mute it and I couldn't.
Did anybody hear that?
Just let me ask you real quickly, how did it go?
Are you asking me? Craig?
Can I call you like at 9 when this is over?
Is this?
Okay, great. Thanks so much.
Seems like a secondary conversation. So my question to all the speakers, to those who want to speak about it, on the use of Gen AI for politics and how to avoid Gen AI slop when using it for politics. Primarily, I think the simplest use is for political cartoons, since you're only generating a single frame. And I'll leave it at that and see how people respond.
You're muted.
Yeah, I know, I got it. I'll comment on that for a moment. One of the things I'm worried about as far as generative AI in politics and a variety of other social issues is that what we are already starting to see is the use of deep fakes that are almost indistinguishable from reality. We have always seen political use of lies in images. They date back decades. I mean, the Soviet Union was notorious for cutting people out of photos and stuff like that. Well, today's deep fakes can be so well crafted that it's getting to the point where you can't quite tell whether it was real or not at all. That really concerns me. Because if we're going to start seeing some of those things in politics in the not too distant future. Wouldn't surprise me if we start seeing them with this coming cycle. With some of the people that are currently running the show, they could easily use it. I guess the question comes down to how do we control that when there is so much at stake and the people who are using it for those purposes, quite frankly, don't give a damn what we think. Because the people who would use it that way are not going to follow the kinds of ethical guidelines that we're talking about here, or that Mark, or that Andy or anyone else wants to propose, because by definition they're sociopathic. Well, they're only interested in power. We see our government the way it is now, which has basically become a mafia bully regime. And I can easily see them doing something like that. That's really what worries me, is that putting these, and I understand that your argument about putting these tools out there and we use them the way we can. But some of these things, I think in the long run, are ultimately detrimental to even our concept of democracy. How can you have a democracy if you don't even know who the candidate actually is? Or what you're seeing is even remotely true?
I will just note we usually try to end around 9:15 or so, which is about 15 minutes, so we can try to be a little bit more concise with some of the questions and answers.
Violet, you want to go or do you want?
No, go ahead. I'm listening.
Okay, so Craig, the first thing I would say is get local as soon as you can. I don't know what tool you're using right now, but I hope that you can find a local open source image generation tool that you can use if you're going to do this instead of doing it with a cloud-based data center tool. As soon as you can get there, I encourage you to get there. The second thing I would say is we need governance, and we need a policy that makes it very clear when we are using AI, and we should start modeling the practice of attributing AI to AI and saying what model it came from, how it got produced, and that type of thing. And then we should start expecting that standard from other people in politics. And the third thing I would say is Gus is absolutely right about everything he's saying, but there's no solution to it that comes from anything other than other than a system shift in the political order and hegemony in order to stop it. And so like we can bemoan that stuff, and it is true. It is very true, every criticism that he's making, but not using it or having the party debate it is not going to stop the powers that be that use it. If we are going to use it, we need to attribute it, and we should be as local as possible with our models so that it has the least ecological and environmental impact. And like we should model the practices we want others to use, and we should, if we're using it, be using it to build the power in order to bring about the system shift that we need in order to have a more ecological world.
All right. I have next on the stack is Cassie Black. Cassie? Are you there?
She's here. I see her on the screen.
Yeah, I know. I do too. I don't know if I'm not being heard or what.
Maybe put the call in chat.
Okay, she said 1 minute.
You can turn the audio off and then back on again.
Me? Oh, you know what? You're muted. You're muted. Just unmute yourself. There you go. Nope, that doesn't seem to work.
Maybe we can move on to Leon while Cassie tries to figure that out. I think Leon actually had his hand up
Okay,
first.
yeah, Leon is next.
Hi, folks. I'm not sure if you're familiar. All the things I've heard are very valid and great. AI is just another hammer in the toolbox. It's who controls it and how it's used. Darth Vader was once a bad man, but in the end of the story, he becomes Luke Skywalker's good father again. So, you know, things are twists and turns everywhere. what we've done in Australia is the Labor government from Anthony Albanese has legislated to keep 16-year-olds and under off certain platforms. So in Australia, our government is trying to regulate the Facebooks and the big generators of information, AI. So I think America has to follow a bit of what Australia is doing. And though Greens aren't in power in most places in the state, you have to try with the legislators, right wing or left wing, who are going to listen, because the right wing also has concerns, and get them on board. So I'm wondering if you guys have been paying attention of what the Albanese Australian government has been doing, because what Andy's been talking about is you can take AI companies to court and sue them if you've legislated truth missions, and if not telling the truth, you can actually fine them. So have you guys been paying attention to what's been happening in Australia?
Good question.
I'll comment on that. I'm vaguely aware of it. I've seen a little bit in passing. I think the idea of legislation that controls AI and requires them to tell the truth is certainly a step in the right direction, which I think is exactly why our government basically is trying to do everything it can to avoid legislation right now. Because that right now, the Trump administration has done everything it can to stymie the ability of the federal government to legislate, and it's corrupted enough that it's probably not going to anyway. So the states are starting to think about doing that, and I think we may have to do it at the state level, because I don't think the federal government's going to be able to do it anytime soon. Although it needs to really needs to be done at a global level. How we do that, I'm not sure. But that's just my thought on it.
So
Andy
we have
or
to be
Violet?
very careful when we start talking about things like age restrictions, that we are not making the internet a place that you have to show ID to have access to. And age restrictions and restrictions around porn are the way that they start to introduce these policies into place that vastly expand their ability to surveil people's internet activity. So I'm all for restrictions on age if they can be done in a way that don't require don't require giving biometric information to these companies, don't require giving biometric information to the government, don't require uploading an ID up into your computer in order to decide what you can and cannot access. Because Palantir is deeply influenced or deeply embedded in our government right now, and they're trying to build a database that tracks everything that everybody does so that they can use it for surveillance purposes, use it for political purposes, use it for economic purposes and things like that. And we have to be very, very careful that the instinct to protect children from the internet does not make us decide that we're going to be okay with a system where everything we do on the internet is tracked and tied to our government ID. And I think that's the direction that Democrats want to go with a lot of these things in the United States. I don't know exactly how it's been implemented in Australia, but in the United States, the way that it gets implemented is that Democrats say things like, we need to have security systems, we need to make sure that people are really who they are. And they work well with Republicans who have moral panic over porn on this. And what they're really trying to do is make sure that Palantir has all the data that it needs in order to be able to track us, surveil us, and rule our lives for the corporations and for the corrupt government. So yes, generally, we need to make sure that children are using the internet in a reasonable way, but what we should not do is give up the ability to go to whatever website we want without having the government know exactly who we are, what we visited, why we visited, and everything else about us.
Okay, Violet, did you want to?
Just quickly about the, controlling information that way. There are ways to get around that where you can have, more than one ID. You have one particular ID that says, okay, I'm over 18, but it's just a number. Okay, so to get that number, you need to do that, but it's specifically for that data point. It doesn't have your name and address and all that. So having compartmentalized information is the solution to that. Over.
Okay, I'm going to go to Jan next, and then we're going to go back to Kathy. Okay? Ann?
I really appreciate a chance to speak to this group. And I'm wondering if there is going to be a time limit on how much I can spend, because my comment is a little bit off topic, but it was raised by Violet earlier, and that is the source of power for these, for the source of power for everything that we do. And Violet mentioned that a nuclear has become so much more safe and et cetera, et cetera. And I must say that I disagree with that completely. And I would like to explain why, if you can give me a chance to do that. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. So
We do have some time limits because we're running up against the 9:15.
yeah, I know this, and I really apologize if this is too far off topic. But I wanted to say that there are four basic forces in the universe that are recognized by physicists. There is gravity, there is electromagnetic force, there is the strong force in the nucleus of the atom, and the weak force in the nucleus of the atom. And the weak force is not weak. These four things cannot be changed. They are how the universe is made up. And nuclear waste, every horse knows, nuclear waste lasts for conservative 100,000 years. The radiation from the nucleus of the atom cannot be changed. Therefore, nuclear power cannot be made safe. In addition, the new nuclear technologies produce more waste per megawatt than the grand old monsters that are now going out. So this is a paper by Alison McFarland. She's not the first author of the paper, but they do explain that the new technologies produce between 2 times and 30 times more waste than the old technologies. And I recommend that you look up Mark Z. Jacobson, Jacobson, from Stanford University. He wrote a book called No Miracles Needed, showing how our energy needs can be met without nuclear power. Our energy needs can be met by wind, solar, and thermal. And I greatly appreciate that you've given me the chance to do this kind of off-topic comment. I'm done.
Thank you. That was important.
I hear you. This is a very complicated discussion that I'd like to continue later, because I think we're going down that hole is just going to make this go on forever. And it's important. It's a very important discussion about nuclear energy and so forth. I would like to have, maybe we'd have a separate event where we basically have a 1-hour discussion about nuclear in particular. I'm a little bit concerned that you sort of conflated a couple of different issues. I mean, yes, of course you're right, the physics, the 4 fundamental forces and so forth, but people's views on nuclear radiation, on radiation in general and nuclear energy, I think is taking us in the very wrong direction. I don't know how to simplify that in a simple way, but what I mentioned were the modular reactors, where you have solid fuel and you can't have meltdowns and so forth, where you have, basically the size of marbles and so forth, that you can have those in that way. The issues of nuclear waste are very complicated. I mean, the one example that came up last year with, I don't know if it was an EcoAction or not, was about the cooling water containment at Fukushima. And it was about releasing that water, the tritium in water, into the ocean. And I made the point of, right now, the atmospheric concentration of tritium is 4 kilograms, and that is stable. That is the amount of tritium in the atmosphere that is generated continuously by cosmic rays, that's raining down on us all the time. And so it's been 30 years since all the nuclear testing. The atmospheric concentration of tritium has reached equilibrium. So,
No.
details like that and the release of the cooling water at Fukushima, if you actually do the math, and we can go through and look at the spreadsheets and so forth, you'll see that the most environmentally conscious thing to do was actually to release that water into the ocean. So, I mean, this can go on for hours, but I don't want to.
Listen, at Davis-Besse, they are producing tritium for the War Department in spades every day. And the War Department is going in there and buying it. And I really apologize. I need to stop because, like Violet said, this could go on forever, and I'm bowing out. I really have to. Thank you.
Another conversation.
Yeah, and my answer on this is...
I just wanted to point out that in the chat, it says that there's a forum on January 15th with the professor that you mentioned.
That's right. It's Stephen Sondheim. I put that in the chat, and these forums are going to answer a lot of these questions. And I agree with Jan that we need to look very carefully. Even the SMRs are known to be very dirty, very expensive. There's a lot of gunk going around. Okay, thank you.
And what I would say here is...
Before we close, Cassie,
No.
do you have your question?
She did put one in the chat.
You're not talking.
Okay.
Yeah.
She's able to get her.
I don't see it, but Mark,
It
if
says
you do,
specifically-
if you can read it.
He specifically says, my question is for me, her question is for me, is if unchecked, how widespread could the damage be on a worst case scenario in relation to hackers and government AI use? I'm honestly not quite sure what you mean with that. But I think that what?
Go ahead, Gus.
Let me say something. Okay. I think the worst case scenario, personally, what I think the worst case scenario could be is that we would end up having a situation where the LLMs, the distortions that are being leaked into the LLMs because of the fact that their training systems are already corrupted by a variety of things. I've cited some of them. Could end up having a situation where we would have kind of a magnified version of the rabbit holes that our system is already fracturing into. And that concerns me because I think politically we could, personally, I think politically it may not be a bad idea to start seriously thinking about some form of localization and regional autonomy, but we need to do it in a way that isn't violent. And the way the commercial AI is currently being used, I think it would end up stoking violence because nobody understands what's going on, and it's designed almost to trigger the most hostile reactions. We already see it in social media. In some cases, social media is fine. But it certainly the stuff hits publicity is the more toxic stuff. And I think that the part of the problem that I see with the commercial AI systems is that they basically kind of train themselves to get trapped in these loops that start recycling the same garbage over and over again and treating more and more people badly. And I certainly don't want to see that happen. But as far as, I'm not quite sure what you mean by regarding the hackers and government AI use exactly. I don't know if you can explain a little farther.
Who are you directing the question to?
Specifically to Cassie, since she wrote the question.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
But it looks like she can't get her mic working, so she's typing something. So.
Okay. Do we want to end with Tracy Frisch? I know she's been trying to get a question in for a while.
Well, I'm ready to quit because I have to call someone back.
Okay.
But my question was, so we're fighting just one more polluting local project that would really devastate a community. And someone who is working with us put together an AI. She's like, because it's kind of technical. And I think there's a lot of ways that people can write comments to our environmental agency that I think will be effective without taking on the technical aspects. But she put together something where people could choose a topic and generate an AI comment. And I'm finding this really to be a very bad idea. It's hard for me to get my point across to her. I think my biggest fear about AI is it's going to make the population just a bunch of idiots who can't think for themselves. And that's my biggest concern.
Okay.
And I think when you run these kind of campaigns, when we've won some of them against great odds, people end up doing research and figuring things out for themselves and becoming very effective at campaigners. And that's what I want to do. And yet I'm up against people who think we can be more efficient if we tell them to just punch in, choose one from column A and two from column B and get their AI comments and send them off. And I just want to hear from people what you think the pros and cons of this are. I invited her, by the way, to come to this, but she did not. She's a very intelligent person, and she's contributing a lot to the campaign, but just a difference of tactics.
Yeah, so my take on this is it is how you're using it, and it is how you are making sure that it is reflecting your values, that it is reflecting facts, that you're making sure that it is reflecting the kind of comments that you want to have. I think your point about people using it to become lazy is very good. If you use it to become lazy and let Anthropic or OpenAI think for you or research for you and don't do the intellectual work that is necessary to become an effective future-focused thinker, they will surely take away your ability to do that. But it is not inherent in the tool that has to happen. It is about how you interact with it, and it is about how you use it. It is about how you govern it within your campaign and how you make sure that it is fulfilling your values if it is going to be used. It can. It doesn't have to be what the corporations want it to be. You are a smart person, and this campaign is filled with smart people, and they can make it run in the way they want it to run, and they can test it until it is running that way and things like that. It'll make mistakes. I was talking to somebody recently about it, about using AI in political spaces. And they said, well, we want to have it be 97% accurate, or something. And I said, that's way better than most people who knock doors or who work campaigns or work in a lot of cases. People get things wrong too. And I think we need to remember that. But the key is to make sure that you are governing it, that you are regulating it, that you are working with it, and that you are making sure that its output that represents you is what you want it to be represented. If you can't get it to do that, you shouldn't use it. If you can get it to do that, it may help make the process easier for some folks, and it may allow your small, scrappy campaign to have the power to scale up in a way to fight against the people that you're fighting against. But it takes work. If you buy the laziness that the corporations are selling, it will in fact give you laziness. If you buy the tool that the corporations are selling and work hard in order to use it in an effective way, you can use it in an effective way.
Are you running in Pennsylvania?
Nope.
What state?
Maryland.
Thanks.
So, Maureen, you have any closing statements for people? Do they want to get involved?
I think this is great. We should definitely have more. It could go on for hours. And as Violet brought up, we should do something on nuclear too. That's another hot topic.
I posted in chat our previous forum on nuclear. People want to go check that out.
Yeah. Thank you for doing that, Mark. That's great. Yeah. So let this be a launch for future discussions. Please, I put in the chat. Make sure you join the AI subcommittee so we can there's some great ideas, both pro and con. So We welcome everybody. So thank you.